What's up, Sludgangistanis? This is going to be my August 2022 Senate election predictions. Let's get started. Let's do some solid races. This is going to be controversial, but I'm going to put Missouri at solid Republican too. Wait, never mind. Actually, we'll start there on the non-solid races. I just remembered there's the independent candidate polling at like 10%. So for that reason, this is going to be controversial. I'm going to drop it down not to likely, but to lean Republican. This could change by November depending on how well the independent candidate continues to do in polling if they pick up steam. Now, let's do Iowa. So Iowa, I'm going to drop down from solid to likely. Chuck Grassley's been in office for a long time, and it's still a solid Republican state, but Michael Franken is a good candidate, number one. And two, people tend to, some people vote against really old incumbents. You saw this happen with, Strom Thurmond, for example. There will be a few more people that decide to vote against Chuck Grassley, but it won't be enough to really make a difference in this race. Forgot Idaho as solid Republican, too. And I also forgot to do all the solid Democrat races. So Vermont would have been likely had, who was it? Christina Nolan won the primary last week, but she didn't. I don't know what Republicans are thinking nominating 2020 election denier or otherwise very conservative to far-right candidates in blue states. They have no chance, but knock yourself out. New York is probably the most solid Democrat state for this election cycle. And then Hawaii. I just covered that election today, and I wore a really terrible Hawaiian shirt for my TikTok. Connecticut was recently changed on Politico from solid to likely, and I'm going to have to agree with that. I think that the Republican favorable environment will help Leora Levy. I don't think she said anything about the 2020 election being stolen, but she's running this weird anti-communist campaign, which is like, bro, this is not the 1950s anymore. But because she's sharing the ticket with Bob Stefanowski, who is definitely more moderate and is localizing the race a lot more, that should benefit her. And also 2016, Richard Blumenthal, I don't think he won by a crazy margin. I think it was like 13 points. Let's see. So yeah, if you look at 2016, never mind that. Wow. I don't know. I'm going to keep it at likely. Washington is also going to be likely only because I think that the margin will be a little bit smaller. In 2010, Patty Murray didn't win by that much, only by like 5 points. They had a really good candidate who had run in a lot of elections before. Tiffany Smiley doesn't exactly have the highest name recognition, but people seem to be excited about her, and so I think she could make the race within 10 points if things go her way and there's not more controversy that benefits Democrats nationwide. How about we do Colorado next? Controversial opinion. Actually, not really. I'm just going to say it's lean Democratic. Right now, and this is a common theme, Democrats are having their summer polling boost where all these ridiculous polls come out that are like, oh, Fetterman plus 11, guys. Fetterman is going to win by 11 points. Oh, also Tim Ryan is going to win by 5 points. Ridiculous. But in general, Democrats are doing well right now. This could change, but if it does, and it looks like it is really going to be a red wave year, then Colorado would be tilt Democratic. I could never put it as anything more than that, like tilt R. It's not possible in Colorado these days. Okay, we'll go to Nevada now. Everyone seems to think that because Laxalt, if that's how you say it, is like the only decent candidate, or at least they say he's the only candidate in like the big four races, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Nevada. He's the only Republican nominee who actually has held office before, which is interesting to think about, but that's part of the reason why people think of the big four races that I just mentioned, he's the most likely Republican to win. But I'm not sure I see it. You also have to consider though, 2012 even, Dean Heller, Republican, won a Senate election in Nevada, even though Barack Obama carried the state. Nevada's just a kind of weird state politically. I am going to put it at tilt Republican. Now let's do Arizona. This one I think is the most overhyped election for Republicans. Now everyone thinks that Blake Masters is this like awesome candidate. Mark Kelly is a former astronaut. No one is even thinking about his credentials. Now Blake Masters may be a good candidate, and if you ran him in Georgia, I think he would win because Herschel Walker, we'll talk about him later actually. But Blake Masters, young, never held office before, and also a little hard to recover from looking kind of more like the Trump candidate in the primary, like having more conservative positions. Kelly is the only Democrat to win this seat since 1962 or something crazy like that. But I still think it's going to be tilt Democratic. I think he has a decent chance to hold on. While we're in the region, let's do Utah. People are going to be probably the most mad at me for this one, but I think it's going to be lean Republican. Not likely. Everyone's putting it as like solid for some reason. Now, I understand that some polls are bad and that I just criticize all the polls that are overestimating Democrats, but here I am about to say that I think the polls have been good for McMullen. Now, you have to consider a lot of factors in this race. First of all, yes, McMullen did well in 2016, but that was with Trump in the race. He was the anti-Trump conservative. People like that. There is no Trump in this 2022 race. So you can say, oh, that means he's just not going to have that same traction that he did back then. But then on the other side, people are saying, well, there's also no Democrat in this race. i.e. like there's no Hillary, you know? Without Hillary in the race in 2016, hypothetically, McMullen could have won the the state. Would every single Democrat who voted for Hillary Clinton vote for Evan McMullin? I don't know about that. I think the bigger issue is whether every person who voted for McMullin in 2016 would vote for him again, which I think that's going to be a problem for him. Wisconsin. Too much wish casting here. It's going to be lean Republican. Mandela Barnes, a very progressive, good candidate, I think, but everyone said the same thing about Ron Johnson losing in 2016, but he won anyways, and so, I don't know. I don't think Mandela Barnes can pull it off here. Why did I forget to put Illinois as solid Democratic? Let's do Kentucky. I'm only going to put Kentucky as likely. There's just this unabated enthusiasm around Charles Booker. It's a similar situation to Mandela Barnes, except that Kentucky's a lot more of a Republican state. He has no real chance of winning, but because of the extra enthusiasm that he's getting, I think it'll be a likely margin instead of a safe margin. And then let's skip to Ohio. So Ohio, we're going to say is solid Democratic. All right, moving on. So North Carolina, we're going to do... I'm kidding, by the way. Oh my God, if you look at polls these days, you'd think, oh wow, Ohio, whatever happened to J.D. Vance? I have lost all faith in most pollsters because of their horrible job polling Ohio. I'm gonna keep it real with you. Tim Ryan is not gonna win. I don't know, like at first, like one poll comes out that shows Ryan winning by like 1 point back in like early June. It's like, oh haha, that's funny. It's just like an outlier, right? Every single poll these days has Ryan winning, and it's just not gonna happen. Sherrod Brown, how much did he win by in 2018? If a two-term incumbent could only win by 7 points in 2018, I don't think that Tim Ryan is going to pull this off in a much different environment. Plus, Ohio is trending Republican, and 4 years can make a big difference. Now let's do New Hampshire. New Hampshire will change pending whoever wins the primary in September, but I'm going to put it as tilt Democratic. Now, if Bull Duck wins the primary, it's over. 2020 election denier, that's going to be great in a state like New Hampshire, a swing state. People love that, really. But if Chuck Morse, the former governor for 2 days, wins the primary, I would keep it as tilt Democratic, especially because New Hampshire tends to vote how the country's voting in general in Senate elections. They tend to swing whichever way the tides are going. We'll do Florida next. I'm going to put it likely Republican. Some people would put it as lean, because once again, you have a lot of enthusiasm around Val Demings, who I watched one of her ads, but going off of that, I think she's a good candidate. But Marco Rubio is a two-term incumbent in a state that's trending Republican and a Republican favorable year. Now, I'm starting to think that Georgia is leaning toward a runoff. That's crazy, isn't it? Which is really stupid, because I get the idea of having a runoff in like a multi-party democracy where there's like 4 candidates and nobody gets more than like 32% of the vote. But in Georgia, Georgia's just not a state that does third parties. Now, a lot of times you'll have like a governor's race or a Senate race occasionally in like every state that has some crazy third party showing. And Georgia, I can't remember reading about an election in Georgia that had a decent third party showing anytime recently. So it's just kind of pointless to have this rule that if a candidate gets 49.7% of the vote, like David Perdue did in 2020, they gotta have a runoff. I don't know how to rate this race if it is a runoff. I'm gonna say if any candidate gets a majority in the first round, it is gonna be Herschel Walker. So I'm gonna put tilt Republican if there is no runoff, because he's sharing the ticket with Brian Kemp, who I think will relatively easily win re-election. If this goes to a runoff, it will have the attention of the nation, even more so than in 2020. One single election to decide the entire fate of the Senate. Democrats have 4 weeks to spend as much money as would probably be spent much better on other causes. If it goes to a runoff, I'm gonna put that as a tilt Democratic, because I think that if Herschel Walker can't win the first round, I don't think he has that great of a chance of winning the second round. But in general, if there was no runoff or any consideration for this race, I'm gonna put it as tilt Republican. North Carolina, likely Republican. Now, some people have this as lean or even tilt, which is ridiculous. Generally, what I see is that people are like, oh my God, North Carolina voted for Barack Obama in like 2008. So it's still a swing state. It's totally not. It's not a swing state. It would be if you nominated a really good Democratic candidate in a blue wave year, but that's not what's going on this year. Sherry Beasley, don't know that much about her as a candidate. Tedward Budd, he's a Republican, and he's already a representative, so that definitely helps, higher name recognition. Alaska, let's do Alaska next. I don't fully understand ranked choice voting. I'll be honest about that. Let's assume what's probably going to happen in the top 4 primary tomorrow is that 2 of the top 4 candidates are going to be Republicans. Obviously, we got Lisa Murkowski and Kelly Tshibaka. I don't know who the other 2 are going to be. I'd imagine probably a Democrat and an independent. If this were not ranked choice voting, it would probably make it less likely, because the 2 Republicans would split the vote between each other and make it easier for a Democrat or independent to win. Ranked choice voting, I don't know, because a lot of people are going to put Tshibaka and Murkowski at the top 2 spots. odds, just like, you know, depending on which Republican you like better, who's number one, but that I don't know how it's possible for a Democrat to win in that scenario. Now, there's no mechanism here to specify which candidate, but I'm gonna put likely Murkowski. And finally, we get to Pennsylvania. Now, according to these ridiculous polls that show John Fetterman winning 52 to 39%, we're gonna put it at solid Democratic. You would think, right? There has been no worse polling done than in the 2022 Senate election in Pennsylvania. But I'm gonna put it as tilt Republican. And I'm sure people are gonna be like, oh my God, how can you put Arizona as tilt Democratic, but you can't put Pennsylvania when they have much more polling done? Again, I already discussed my issues with polling, but also, this is an open seat. Second of all, Dr. Oz has ridiculously high name recognition. He was literally the second celebrity I ever knew of in my entire life. My mom would always watch Oprah, so that was the first celebrity. And she'd always have Dr. Oz on the show. I was like 4 years old, and I'd always be hearing Dr. Oz's name on the TV. Now, Fetterman's terminally online campaign is great. It's absolutely hilarious with the, did you know Dr. Oz is from New Jersey? New Jersey is the state that he lives in, and he actually has a mansion located in New Jersey, which is in New Jersey. Did you guys know? Now, I'm not saying that's the only thing he's campaigning on, but even if you look at the other things he's campaigning on, being a progressive and all, I don't know if in a Republican favorable year, when you need to win swing voters to have any shot at winning, that a progressive candidate is going to be able to do it. This one is just difficult to talk about. There's no real way to predict it. You have a 6'9" progressive, absolute badass lieutenant governor who only campaigns in gym shorts and hoodies. Then you have a Muslim Turkish citizen celebrity doctor who a bunch of people are saying is not even from the state. This is going to be the most interesting statewide election of the 21st century. My roommate is from Delaware County, and he says, Beck, you don't understand, people really hate Oz here in Pennsylvania. Now that's Delaware County, so I don't know whether to base the whole state off of that. So yeah, that's my predictions. Oh wait, I'm doing a screen recording, so that's probably gonna mess it up. Those are my predictions. I'll see you in a few months with updated predictions. Don't get mad at me for overestimating Evan McMuffin's chances or underestimating social media edgelord John Fetterman. But yes, thank you for watching, and be sure to go and tweet 50 times that Dr. Oz lives in New Jersey, because it never gets old.